Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show.
Cup of Joe Wrestling Show?
With Joey Harris. A podcast for the wrestling fan on the go. So take your favorite beverage of choice and join Joey as he takes a look at some of the biggest shows on the WWE Network.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show. I am your host, Joey Harris, and we are broadcasting from makeshift studios in the shadow of South Central Virginia. You can follow the show on Twitter at Cup of Joe Pod. You can email the show at cupofjoewrestlingshow@gmail.com, and if you would like to support the show, at paypal.me/cupofjoepod to do so. And folks, back again here with you. So glad that you joined me this week, and indeed every week right here on the Cup of Joe Wrestling Show. Have had an upsurge in listeners lately, and I would really just like to extend my thanks and my appreciation to you for that. But right here at the top, I do want to send out my condolences on the loss of Jackie Crockett, longtime cameraman for JCP and WCW right up until the end of WCW, and of course the brother to Jim Jr. and David and Francis Crockett. Condolences go out to his friends and fans and family. And then my weekend, my wife and I went to my in-laws, helped them out with some things around the house, power washed their back deck and then repainted it, and then went to a celebration at a winery. They had music, live music there, and that was nice. And I don't even really drink. I didn't drink anything other than a couple of Diet Mountain Dews and then some water there, but just worn out the next day. You can't get around and do the things that you used to do as well as you used to be able to do them. And then what am I watching? My wife and I are in the middle of watching Veronica Mars. We just finished the first 3 original seasons and the movie and are getting ready to dive headlong into the last season that has come out a couple of years ago on Hulu. So that's what I'm watching there. But today, let's get right into it. Today, we look at the 1993 SummerSlam Spectacular from the WWF. The 1993 SummerSlam Spectacular was shown on the USA Network on August the 22nd, 1993. It was recorded August the 16th, 1993 from the Mid-Hudson Civic Center in Poughkeepsie, New York. There were 3,000 in attendance. Jim Ross and Gorilla Monsoon run down what we are going to see. We start out with a non-title match, Yokozuna with Mr. Fuji versus Jim Duggan. Yoko booed heavily when he comes out. Duggan gets a tremendous reaction when he comes out. A USA chant goes out. Duggan attacks Yokozuna from behind. He goes after Yokozuna with a 2x4, but referee Mike Chioda takes it away from Duggan. Yokozuna takes advantage to attack Duggan. Fuji hits Duggan with the flagpole when Chioda is distracted. Yokozuna kicks Duggan. Fuji chokes Duggan. Yokozuna throws Duggan outside. Duggan comes back with left and right hands. Yoko drops a leg on Duggan. Yokozuna with a headbutt and a bear hug. The USA chant goes out again. Duggan goes to slam Yokozuna, but Yoko falls on him for a 2 count. Yokozuna goes back to the bear hug. Duggan fighting to get out and bites Yokozuna. Yokozuna chops Duggan in the corner. He then chokes Duggan. Duggan fighting back. Yokozuna with a corner whip, but Duggan moves on the charge. Yokozuna hitting Duggan's back with forearms. Duggan comes back with punches and a clothesline. 2 more clotheslines knock Yokozuna down. Fuji grabs Duggan's foot as he was going for the 3-point stance. Yokozuna splashes Duggan in the corner and then hits the bonsai drop to get the pin. Officials come down and get Duggan away from Yokozuna. Vince McMahon interviews Jim Cornette, Mr. Fuji, and Yokozuna. Cornette says Yokozuna is a rabid dog and ready for SummerSlam and Lex Luger, but it's Luger's last shot. Jim and Gorilla talk about the SummerSlam hotline. We then flash back to what's happened between Money Incorporated and Razor Ramon. Blake Beverly versus Razor Ramon. Ramon has become very popular with the crowd. A Razor chant goes out. Ramon throws his toothpick at Beverly. They lock up and drive to a corner. Beverly chops Ramon in the corner. Ramon comes back with chops of his own. Beverly bails to the outside. Ramon follows. Beverly back in and gets a side headlock. Ramon tries to get out. Beverly goes back to the headlock. Every time Ramon gets out, Beverly pulls the hair to get him back in the move. Ramon gets out, and pulls Beverly's hair to get him down on the mat. Beverly wants to test her strength. Back and forth. Beverly backdrops Ramon to the outside. Beverly takes off a turnbuckle pad. Beverly with a neck breaker. Corner clothesline to Ramon into the exposed buckle. Beverly with a backbreaker. A razor chant goes out. Beverly with a power slam for a 2 count. Beverly with slaps to Ramon. Ramon reverse Irish whips Beverly into the exposed buckle and hits the razor's edge to get the pin. SummerSlam commercial. Lex Express video. We then get King's Court with Jerry Lawler. Lawler puts down Bret Hart and his family. JR interviews Hart about Lawler. Hart says he will put down Lawler at the SummerSlam, so take a shot if you're drinking at home. The Smoking Guns and Tatanka versus Reno Riggins, Barry Horowitz, and the Brooklyn Brawler. You know who was going to win this one. Tatanka hits Riggins with a body press to get the pin. Mean Gene Okerlund interviews The Undertaker about the Rest in Peace match. Undertaker says he doesn't have the urn or pallbearer, but does have the creatures of the night. Harvey Whippleman and Giant Gonzalez come out, and officials keep them apart. WWF Intercontinental Championship match. Shawn Michaels with Diesel versus Bob Backlund. Not a bad match between the two. Michaels gets the pin with a roll-up and a handful of tights. Vince McMahon interviews Ludvig Borga, who says Americans are stupid. He says he's here to dish out pain. Marty Jannetty versus Dwayne Gill. Jannetty wins with the flying fist drop. WWF Tag Team Championship match. The Steiner brothers Rick and Scott versus Money Incorporated, Ted DiBiase, and IRS. A cage match where the door is locked. Both team members must climb out of the cage and hit the floor. Steiner's out and extremely popular. The bell rings and IRS tries to climb out, and the Steiners stop him and then stop DiBiase from climbing out. They pair off. Steiners try to climb, but Money Inc. stop them from climbing. They go back and forth. Both teams trying to get out. IRS perched on the top of the cage and Scott drags him down. IRS crotches Scott on the top rope. Rick does the same to DiBiase on the top of the cage. IRS gets caught and crotched on the cage. Scott trying to climb out. DiBiase climbs and grabs Scott and suplexes Scott back in the ring. Money Incorporated double team Rick in the corner. Rick trying to get out. All four going at it. Both Steiners trying to climb out. IRS superplexes Scott off the top of the cage. Both Money Inc. members trying to get out. IRS slammed off. DiBiase run into the steel. Scott climbs over, but Money Inc. grabs Scott and starts to drag him back in. Rick tries to climb out, but DiBiase tries to get him down. Back and forth on the cage. All four in the cage. Scott gets IRS on his shoulders. IRS comes back and runs Scott into the turnbuckle. Rick collides with DiBiase. Scott and IRS both climbing out and get down. Rick starts to climb, but IRS climbs back in to stop Rick. Scott climbs back in and hits IRS with a double axe handle from the top rope. Both Steiners trying to get out. All four going at it. Scott back out again. DiBiase with a backbreaker. Scott climbs back in. Scott trying to stop IRS, but he gets out. Steiners stop DiBiase from getting out. DiBiase tied up. Steiners climbing out. IRS gets in and stops the Steiners from getting out. Rick gets down. Money Inc. double teaming Scott. Scott with a double Steiner line. All three men down. Scott starts to climb. DiBiase fighting him. IRS climbs out. Rick grabs him. DiBiase out and trying to get IRS off, but Scott climbs out to win as they sign off. Final thoughts. This was a good setup for SummerSlam with a great cage match at the end. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TheJoeyHarris. If you like the show, please leave a review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or your preferred podcast app. I would really appreciate it. So I do have one thing that I forgot, so I'm going to put it here at the end. I want to make sure that it got out. Folks, I was a guest on the Men in Tights podcast talking about wrestling and comic books and movies and all of that. So that was a fantastic time. So check that out. It's episode 163 of the Men in Tights podcast, available wherever you get your fine podcasts. So check me out. Thank you for joining me this week. This is Joey saying so long from the heart of Virginia.
The Cup of Joe Wrestling Show is a production of Baby Kangaroo Media.